Class is now in session. I am Professor Hockey, and today we'll be discussing the game between the Sharks and the Anaheim Ducks. This is the third meeting between these two teams. The first one was the Sharks' first game of the season, and that didn't go too well for them. They lost it 5-2. However, the second meeting went a bit better. They managed to bring it into overtime and take the 2 points. However, they still gave Anaheim a single one. This third game, and maybe the more important one of the season thus far, they managed to win it in regulation to create some separation between both of these teams, who are both vying for a top 3 spot in the Pacific Division as we approach the halfway mark of this season. This game was very momentum heavy as it definitely kept swinging back and forth. The game started off and I felt as though the Ducks had a bit more pressure. They managed to get the first goal of this game from Jakob Silfverberg. However, the ice began to tilt a bit more towards the San Jose Sharks. They got a goal from their fourth line. Melker Karlsson got that one. This brought the Sharks tied at 1, and that's how the first period ended up finishing. And the Sharks, as I said, in those last few minutes of the first period, they seemed to be the better team. As the second period started, the Sharks came out very, very well as well. They managed to get tons and tons of opportunities. Marcus Sorensen capped that one off. He put the Sharks up 2-1. But then as the second period went on, while the Sharks were still good, it came to about maybe 5 or so minutes left in that second period. The Ducks really started to pour on a lot of pressure. They hit a couple posts. They were getting tons of opportunities. Martin Jones had to be very, very good in those last few minutes of the second period just so the Sharks could hold the lead going into the third period. The Ducks would not let up, however, once the third period started. They got a ton more chances. They got a goal from Kiefer Sherwood, put themselves back tied at 2. However, then the Sharks began to settle the game down. Brent Burns got his 5th of the season in his 1,000th game of the season, put the Sharks up by 1 with 3 goals, and then Tomas Hertl with the empty net gave the Sharks the 4-2 win. So a bit of a lucky win. There were a lot of posts hit by the Anaheim Ducks, but still they played well enough, I'd say, to be worthy of the victory, especially when you consider the past 3 losses that they had against the Coyotes, Kings, and the Jets, where you could say that they played well enough to at least win one of those, and they ended up losing all 3. First thing I'd like to talk about is Martin Jones. He had an interesting game tonight, certainly. He made a myriad of great saves near the end of the second period. A beautiful one onto Silfverberg with the diving glove. Some great saves that actually... I said the Ducks hit multiple posts in this game, but a couple of them actually are saved by Jones and then hit off the post. So I guess you could say there were some nice saves by Martin Jones. Got to be lucky to be good, good to be lucky, and everything like that. So Jones had a solid game. And then, of course, the Sherwood goal. While Sherwood had a lot of time to pick his spot for this shot, it would have been nice to see Martin Jones make that save. So Martin Jones, as usual, giveth, and Martin Jones also taketh away. But still, all in all, a solid game for him tonight, only letting 2 goals to the Ducks. Next is Joe Thornton, probably the best San Jose Sharks forward, or maybe even just skater in general. He was just looking on top of things. He had a fantastic, I'd say, other half of the first, start of the second period. It fell off a bit from there, but still, it looked super good for him. I haven't seen Joe Thornton play like that well since maybe a few years ago when he had that point-per-game season back in the year the Sharks made the Stanley Cup Finals. He was controlling the ice. He was making some great passes. He didn't actually end up with a point tonight, but I'll even say that I felt as though he was indeed the Sharks' best player on the ice. He was just making so much happen. Next, I'd like to talk about Karlsson, and I'd say at the start of this game, coming into this one, I think it would be more likely for me to talk about Erik Karlsson than Melker Karlsson. Erik Karlsson didn't even play this game due to suspension, but I will talk about Melker Karlsson. He got a goal tonight. He actually looked quite good in general. I thought the fourth line was actually just insane for the San Jose Sharks. I mean, maybe not insane, but they got a lot of good chances generated. They led to the first goal, obviously. They led to the third goal by Brent Burns, and they just were outworking the Anaheim Ducks whenever they were on the ice. And so Melker Karlsson, a player who really started off this season quite poorly, and not just the first few games, but the first few chunk of games, the first couple dozen and a half, 30 games into the season. He just wasn't looking that great, but he really has picked it up as of late. Ever since Redill came to that fourth line, Redill was not on the fourth line tonight, but still, it seemed as though his, offensive spark rubbed off onto Melker Karlsson, as well as Barclay Goodrow, who I'd like to mention. Goodrow put up 3 assists tonight. He also had a very good game, so he's definitely associated here. But just both of those players also quite good. If it wasn't for Joe Thornton, I'd say maybe they were the best players on the ice for the San Jose Sharks, which is something, again, I never thought I'd be saying about 2 fourth liners, especially Karlsson and Goodrow. The last thing I'd like to talk about is the new lineup. I said at the end of the Arizona, well, I guess I should start back at the Los Angeles Kings game. In the third period, DeBoer decided to make some lineup changes to try and get some offense sparked, and it did end up working. However, he went back to what was normal before the Arizona game, and that didn't work out either. So again, the lines were jumbled up. And so my prediction coming out of the Christmas break was that the Sharks would end up changing the lines, and that's exactly what happened into this one. It ended up being Sorensen, Thornton, and Pavelski as the first line. I'm saying they're the first line because they definitely looked like the first line tonight. They were playing some great hockey. As I said, Joe Thornton looked very, very good, like the best player for the Sharks, but Marcus Sorensen was also looking very, very strong. I thought Pavelski was the worst one on that line, and even then, Pavelski was looking very good as well, so it's saying a lot to say that he wasn't putting in as much work as Thornton and Sorensen. They were just all over the ice for almost every shift they were playing, and even though they only got a single goal generated, they were probably the best line in this game. Radil was then put with Couture and Meyer. This was a line that DeBoer tried a couple times against the Kings and against the Coyotes when they jumbled the lines. It worked against the Kings as Radil scored a goal there. It wasn't that great tonight. Radil really didn't get much ice time, but in the few shifts he did get with them, I thought it was okay, but I guess we could see why, Radil isn't necessarily some sort of second line player at this point in his career. He's mostly just a fourth liner, maybe third liner, so you could definitely see that there was some missed chemistry, maybe some missed plays between these players. So I'm not sure if this is a line that can stick together going forward. However, with the Sharks' victory, it's possible DeBoer keeps the three of them together. I wouldn't be disappointed, but I'd like to see something where, because Couture and Meyer, in general, have been probably the most consistent forwards for the Sharks this season. The third line was Evander Kane, Hertl, and Kevin Labanc. This line did not work that well. For some reason, Tomas Hertl, even though we saw him put at center against the Arizona Coyotes in the third period, he scored a couple goals. It was going very well, but for some reason, whenever he starts the game as a centerman, it just doesn't seem to work out. Hertl didn't have that great of a game. I didn't think Evander Kane was any good at all. He's been very good in these past few games, even in games where he didn't record a point. Tonight, he didn't get a point, and he just wasn't doing much. Kevin Labanc as well wasn't doing much, except for maybe on the power play, I guess, although the power play for the Sharks was quite abysmal this game. But the third line wasn't that great. And then, of course, the fourth line, it was Goodrow, Donskoy, and Karlsson. Well, Donskoy didn't get much ice time this game. I think he got about 7 minutes, which was a bit of a surprise because I thought Donskoy was looking pretty good. He set up that first goal by Melker Karlsson. But for some reason, DeBoer decided to bench him. Even then, as I said, the fourth line was very, very good tonight. The defensive pairings also got a new face to it. Joachim Ryan returned to the lineup for the first time in a while because I believe Tim Heed was injured, is at least what I would suspect. Just considering the fact, I'm pretty sure it is, but considering the fact that Tim Heed put up about 15-ish minutes and scored a goal in the previous game, it would seem unlikely that Heed would be taken out of the lineup. But just a comment here, I don't know what Joachim Ryan did to Peter DeBoer at some point this season because Ryan ends up getting benched for the majority of this game. He ends up playing maybe about just over 6 minutes. And this is a game in which the Sharks do not have Erik Karlsson to fall back on. And so they're really relying on players, like Burns ended up with another close to 30-minute game. Vlasic had over 24 minutes. They really just cut the bench to 5 defensemen for absolutely no reason because it's not even like some of those games earlier this season where Ryan was just not playing well. He was actually okay. He even had an assist tonight. But for some reason, I don't know what Ryan did, as I said, but DeBoer decides that Joachim Ryan just isn't good enough to be a consistent defenseman in the lineup this game, and as such he gets benched. So it really would be zero surprise. It's 100% expected that when Erik Karlsson comes to the lineup, back into the lineup for the next game, it will be Joachim Ryan who is stepping out, and Shemek will of course keep his spot because I thought Shemek had a decent game tonight. But that will do it for this review. The Sharks will be back in action on Saturday against the Edmonton Oilers. The Edmonton Oilers have been having a very rough go at it in these past few games. They had hired Ken Hitchcock and it was going very well for them. Their first game with that new coach was against the Sharks. They managed to win it in overtime, and as I said, it was going quite well. I think they started off in their first 12 games 9-2-1, but ever since then they have struggled to win. They're out of a playoff spot at this point, and so the Sharks will look to keep them further out of a playoff spot with the 2 points that night. Class dismissed.